Hello everybody, this is the latest episode of TAPED Crusaders, and we are reviewing every single superhero adaptation ever made. So we finally got into 1978, the very first Superman movie. I'm your co-host, Mike-El, and as always I'm joined by...
Joshua Murr-VELL. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We're finally here. I feel like it's almost been leading up to this movie.
Well, yeah, that's kind of why I created the podcast. So anyway, first I'm going to introduce returning guest, Quasar chronology veteran,
Expert, man.
expert you could say by this point, Marshall Sfalcin.
Hey,
Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Yeah, I wasn't sure it was going to happen, like I said. But yeah, I'm glad you're here. Also joined by Helen. We won't use your last name to keep your privacy, right? But thank you. You're welcome to throw in,
She's the American influence.
We get the American perspective,
Perfect.
right, from you?
Yeah, sure. If I think of anything, I'll say it.
Awesome. Okay, and also returning guest from our Star Wars movie reviews, Jordan Krug.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. So, okay, let's put it this way. Let's just give impressions of the movie that we have from our memory first, okay? I'm going to say it might be the first or second superhero that I ever knew about, right? Like, at the time, it would have been Adam West Batman, which I thought was brand new in the late 70s when I was growing up as a little kid. And then it would have been Christopher Reeve Superman. So I watched Superman 1 and 2 many times as a kid. Then 3 came out, it wasn't quite as good. 4 came out, I don't even know if I saw it in the theater, right? But especially these first 2 movies I've watched so many times, and I've always held them in high regard. In my opinion, right up there with Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and stuff like that. So, Jordan, let's jump to you next. What's your childhood memory of these movies?
Well, like, I wasn't old enough to see him in the theater, so I saw him on home video. But I do remember being very excited to get into the whole merchandising of them. Like, they had storybooks and comic book tie-ins and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, I think I might have just seen it on TV, and I didn't, VHS wasn't a huge thing yet. But yeah, I consider the first movie sort of the prototype of the superhero movie.
Sure.
Like, yeah, there were superhero movies before it, but if you trace back the lineage of every single superhero movie that's come out in the past, like, 30, 40 years,
yeah.
They all go back to this movie. This movie set the tone and the style. It's a weird blend of serious and camp, which somehow works for Superman. It worked for Batman in the 60s, didn't work for Batman in the 90s.
Right.
But that tone doesn't feel dated. Like, when you watch the first couple Superman movies today, Richard Donner, the director, he established a serious tone, which means they don't date like a lot of other movies of that era do.
I agree with everything you said, and there's really only one sequence that I think doesn't hold up. We'll talk about that later. But Marshall, you're the oldest of all of us by far, so you can tell us your impression. You saw it in the theater, you said,
yes,
right?
Yes, I did. I think I was 9.
Okay.
9 years old, and it was the afternoon showing at the Americana Theater in Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. It was the biggest screen.
Nice.
The biggest screen. Like, it's a massive screen, so any seat you sat in was fantastic. Now, while watching it, you watch this movie. It's a great story, and the one thing that I can only speak in retrospect now, because, like, looking at it as a kid, you just loved every moment of it, and you were looking forward to it. And thinking of modern movies, like, you don't see Superman for like 40 minutes.
Exactly, right.
Could they do that today? I don't know. But I own the film, and I've showed my young children. Thank God they were able to see it on a big HD screen. Because there's so many gorgeous shots, almost like Gone with the Wind style influences, the way they shot it. Great acting, great writer, like The Godfather.
Mario Puzo wrote the first draft.
Right,
yeah.
and good director, who was eventually let go, I guess.
Richard Donner, yeah.
And big mistake. And it plays like what would be considered an award-winning Best Picture in today's market. Because of the drama and the seriousness you talked about. But the camp is I wouldn't even consider it even camp. It's almost like if watching a Woody Allen movie, the way it's a serious drama, but when they make a joke, it's almost like between friends, or like Curb Your Enthusiasm the first couple seasons. It's just everyday jokes that they make that are natural and funny that make it not dateable.
Right. The tone stays the same.
I was telling Helen on the way here, I dare say that it's one of the few perfect movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very surprised to hear that.
Right, and maybe there's some CGI that, you know,
Sure.
there's not even CGI back then, but
Yeah, some of the effects are dated, but
but beyond that, if they touched up like they did the Star Trek series, you know,
And
like
Star Wars,
my
Star Wars,
God,
right.
they would but Star Trek too.
Oh,
They
sure, the old show.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right,
they
right.
did that with it, but it would
Yep.
be like structurally almost the perfect movie. Are you shocked?
Because for those that don't know, Marshall, our listeners here, Marshall is very critical of movies. Let's just give a quick, you shut off Edward Scissorhands halfway through, if that. You walked out on Iron Man 3. But I'm trying to give more, like, you gave, there were certain Oscar-winning films, I can't remember what, but like 6 out of 10. Blade Runner 2049, what did you give that? You thought it was okay, right?
I just said, 2/3 of it was great. And
Okay.
The other third was like unnecessary.
Okay, Knives Out, almost walked out of Knives Out.
I thought that it could have stopped. It's like Wes Anderson's movies. It's like, oh my
Okay.
God, what a beautiful ending, and then it just keeps going.
Okay.
Why?
So yeah, we're all surprised by how much you liked it, but I'm with you. I agree with you everything you said. Helen, would you like to give just an impression of your memories of it as a kid? You haven't seen it since
Did
it
you
came
see
out.
it at the movie theater?
I'm pretty sure I did, but I was young. But I think when I did see it, I would had to have been maybe a couple years after it came out, and if maybe it was screening at a movie theater. In my mind, I remember seeing it in a movie theater, unless it was Superman 2. But I know I did see Superman 1 also. And for me, because I was so young when I saw it, it's more of a feeling
Sure.
as opposed to a memory of maybe being a little bit more exact because you guys have seen it more recent. So for me, it's a feeling, and I remember my father loved it. And the fact that my father loved it made me love it, and Superman was strength, and so it was like this, and I remember that feeling, and also he was pretty dreamy. So yeah, so it's basically for me it's more of a feeling because I was so young, but I do remember loving it, and Lois Lane, and my family was fans of Superman.
That's great. And I'm just going to throw some drop facts as we go. The movie was really popular. It was the #1 movie of that year, 1978. I think it made maybe 200 or 300 million worldwide, maybe 200 million. I'm not sure, but it was a lot for its day. It was incredible, right? But we still have to get to Josh. You're obviously much younger. You're 20 years younger than me, right?
Yeah, I'm 27.
47.
I'm about to turn 28.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah.
So first, what's your impression of this as a kid?
So I thought that I remembered this movie.
Okay.
Because I did watch it when I was really young, but I've never revisited it, and watching it recently so we can talk about it was almost like I watched it for the first time.
Sure.
Because I remembered like specific things like very clearly, but the whole tone of everything, like it almost felt like I was going in watching it for the first time, and it was fantastic.
Did you see it on an HD flat screen? Yeah, and let me ask you: do you remember the helicopter scene? Like, is that the one you recall as a child? Like, because that to me was like one of the most epic.
Yeah,
scene. It's when he shows his S for the first time.
Revealing the S when he like rips open the button-up shirt.
Yeah.
I remember the balcony scene, like my date with Superman, or my night with Superman.
Yep.
I remember that so clearly. A couple of other things, maybe the Fortress of Solitude, like flashes of that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure too, like a lot of it is like memories kind of coming back from just seeing clips on the internet or images or whatever. But I thought that I remembered this movie and knew it, but it was like seeing it again.
So, and we'll get to our reinterpretation or our re-feelings, but before we jump into it, we're not gonna. We have a rule in this podcast: we don't do research, despite what people request. But we will just give a couple facts. Like you mentioned, this was, I believe, maybe the first time in history that 2 films were filmed at the same time. 3 Musketeers had footage reused for 4 Musketeers that was also produced by the
Sfalcins, yes.
Right.
And that actually created a precedent in Hollywood or in international filmmaking that they called the Sfalcin clause.
Right.
Where basically they didn't tell the actors they were filming 2 movies. They just split one movie into 2, but they only paid the actors for one.
Right.
And so there was the actors were rightfully angry that they had not been paid for 2 movies.
Right.
So going forward in the future, and that actually happened in Superman and Superman 2 with Marlon Brando as well. He basically said, well, no, you got to pay me all again for Superman 2. And then that's why they wrote him out and reshot all his stuff with...
Susanna York.
You're right.
Interesting. Okay.
I do want to bring up one thing, which I think is important. The movie that I'm talking about, the one that I revere, is the original theatrical cut.
Gotcha.
And in the intervening years, they've done a director's cut where they've added about 10 more minutes of stuff, which I think all hurts the movie. And so when you say it's a perfect movie, I agree. I agree the theatrical cut is a perfect movie. I do not
they
like
they cut out a lot of things too that I remember as a kid seeing it at the theater when he enters the villain's lair, and there are many different levels he has to go through in order to get to the lair. Like there's machine guns.
So what you're
fire.
talking about is actually a TV version. So in the theaters, that scene didn't exist, but when they put it out for TV, they lengthened it to make more money because there's going to be commercials, they can run it longer. And so that scene was always in the TV version for many years.
That must be my memories from like watching it as a child.
But that scene that's a perfect example of it's a cool scene to see him repel fire and ice and bullets. But we already know all that.
But still, this is one of the first times you see it.
So the scene that kills me
weird scenes
in the current version that you buy on Blu-ray, if you don't specifically look for the theatrical cut, the current version has this extra scenes in the beginning with Marlon Brando.
Oh yes,
that are redundant, and they put this silly guard, a Kryptonian guard with his big square eyes, and he's heading towards Jor-El or Brando at the same time as the sun's about to explode, and they're trying to do this dual tension thing, and it doesn't need it.
Right.
And the effect looks so silly that within 10 minutes into the movie, you're watching this terrible effect with this silly guard, and to me, it spoils the whole beginning of the movie, because if you watch the theatrical cut, it's lean, it's tight, it's tense, and it's serious. And as soon as they put that guard in there, it gets silly.
Sure.
Right off the bat,
Right. Well, let's be clear. They shot fat. Like, there's a lot of stuff. Like, 45 minutes? Like, because there's different TV versions of the movie where they just kept adding and adding, and then they'd give you the movie and they'd say, you do what you want with it, NBC or whatever.
Yeah,
that's
so
the
Richard,
way it was back then.
That's what it was Richard Donner had no control over that stuff. Basically, the Sfalcins said, we have all this outtake footage, all these extra scenes, put them in, and never mind about the pacing or whether they're needed or if they're redundant.
I remember as a kid, it's funny you say that, because you would see so many different movies. And this is what they would do even on Channel 50 locally, like Channel 20 in Detroit, is they would just go, well, we don't have any commercial space for this, so we're going to add that extra minute of, Christopher Reeve walking around buying ice cream.
Yes.
And you're like, what is this?
Yeah,
It
exactly.
makes no sense.
You know what? It's so funny that you mentioned at the beginning that this movie was like the blueprint of these big blockbusters today, and it's like
Nothing
you guys
like
saying
it.
that is like it's both story wise, and also like commercial wise, like having all of this extra stuff that's like not needed in the movie, kind of like to just sell it again, or to like fluff it up for TV,
But that's
so to
DVDs,
have more like
Blu-rays.
popcorn and
They never reach the definitive version,
Well,
because
so
there's always a definitive version next.
Right.
You know?
But there's also a segment of the audience that thinks, oh, well, if there's an extra scene, I want to see that version, because
As a fan, I love to see the
Sure.
extra stuff, but you got to think, they made those decisions back in 77 or 78 when they were editing it, and they're like, no, this opening is too fat, we got to make it tight, we got to make it lean, and it worked beautifully. And now they throw this stuff back in, and it meanders, and it takes too long, and it's redundant,
well, there's another, because did you watch?
I think it was the theatrical cut, because I don't remember any like extra scenes like at the beginning, or
does he get?
There was
does he get? Does he go through tunnels in Luther's lair and get shot by bullets?
No,
okay,
he
so you
just
saw
shows up
it.
and then
It
he
goes
busts down the
straight
door.
to the bus
Yeah.
down the
Okay,
door.
right.
Right. He
So-
drills down. Like a
So that's the
corkscrew.
best cut.
Right.
That's the one people should watch.
So another one that because I've watched both versions many times, but I as far as I know, there's a middle part where he's talking to Jor-El again.
Yes.
And Jor-El's kind of like, "Oh, you're getting attached to them, aren't you?" Or something like that.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, it does expand on his developing the tension between the two fathers. But other than that,
It's also that was one of the very first scenes filmed.
okay.
And you can tell because Christopher Reeve is not quite there yet.
Yep.
He doesn't quite have the character yet, and the gravitas and the I just feel like his acting's not that great in that scene.
You mean when he goes to put his arms out
Yes.
to embrace him? It's
Yes.
like, wow, that's a rare moment of bad acting for
Yes,
him.
but
Yeah.
that was like literally that's where they started shooting on the Fortress of Solitude
Right.
set. So that was literally week one,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And so that scene shouldn't, as far as I'm concerned, like that scene doesn't belong in the movie.
Yeah.
So I'm just also curious, like you know the way I said that you don't see the Superman character for like I don't know what it is.
It's like 48 minutes. I looked at
48
mine.
minutes.
Yeah.
And how different that is today. Seeing it again, and maybe almost for you, like your first time, just the human aspect. No, I know obviously he's an alien.
Right. Yeah.
And the way even Christopher Reeve transforms his character, and if there's the psychology behind it that he is an alien, the stupid, dumb, guy who's always dropping stuff, clumsy Ox
Otis?
is no
Clark.
Christopher Reeve,
Oh, Clark.
Yeah.
Kent
Yes.
is what he sees as a human.
Well, that's Tarantino's theory,
Yeah,
but it's not necessarily accurate.
no, but that would be the thing. But I was gonna say all that beautiful, just a human story.
Mm-hmm.
Just that in itself is the thing I think that makes it hold up.
It's-
That,
it's
that
really-
even even Superman is at points could have been anybody. It's not even necessary. It's just a love story, and it's like the way they'll try to attack movies like we got to attract the women and we got to attract the men, we got to attract these people, we got to attract those people. That it covers all these natural things that all humans deal with, and Superman is just like a cherry on the top of this.
They
this
cover
sundae.
it really well with one line, which is when she's having her date with Superman on her balcony, and she says, "Do you eat?" So basically, are you human? Do you do the
Right.
same things as humans do? He says, "Yeah, I eat when I'm hungry." And boom, you're like, okay, the humans will accept him even though he's an alien or whatever
Right, right.
because physiologically, other than his strength and his laser vision and all
He's a
that stuff,
human.
he's a human being, right?
Right.
So let's talk about the basics. So there's kind of like 3 acts to this movie.
Can I
Go
start
ahead.
with how genius the opening of the movie is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you have is a child's voice reading to you in black and white a comic book.
Yeah.
The screen is a 4:3. It's an anamorphic frame with curtains on the side, but it's a 4:3 window that you're looking through. The child begins to describe the Daily Planet, so we see the Daily Planet as a planet. Then we move past it, past the Earth's moon. Then we're into space, and as soon as we're into space, the music starts, and the big blue-colored title blasts through, opens the curtains, and now you understand. Okay, we went from a child's POV, we went from comic book, we went from, Superman was done in the 30s, so you went from the black and white era, the 4:3 to widescreen with like this visual effect of this title that nobody at that time had seen.
Sure.
It's like the perfect opening of this movie. It just kind of like throws down the gauntlet in the first 2 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
It sounded like the director himself pitching the idea. It's gonna be this. It's gonna be that.
I
But
think
you're
that's
right.
why. I think that's why it works too, because it doesn't. Obviously, it feels like a superhero movie because he's in tights and he's got the underwear and the cape and everything. But it's not a superhero movie. It's like a fairy tale first, and that
Right,
really
it's like
kind of
Wizard
sets
of
that
Oz.
up.
It
Yeah.
has a Wizard
Yeah.
of Oz feel. It
It-
has a Gone
like
with the Wind
Moses,
look.
right? Like he's Moses. Like it's setting up right from the beginning. It has like, and then even the story itself is like a romance before it's anything else. Like even down to like how they set up the world is like romanticized version of real life.
Well, let's go back. Let's just go through the. So
Sure, yeah,
let's go
yeah.
Act 1. We'll call it on Krypton. A different Krypton than the comic books, because like I'm a Superman comic book guy, and then in the comic books, it was like a utopian society. Everyone wore tights. Jor-El had green and yellow or whatever, right? In the movie, they go for a more. I believe the set designer said, imagine the inside of a crystal, right? So it's all ice. They're all wearing this weird reflective white clothing. They're all, human, but maybe a little bit more aloof than the average human. But the idea is obviously the technology is better. I mean, the whole concept of the crystals, all the information is encoded in these crystals.
Well,
is just,
I like the way how
brilliant.
that it said, okay, we're not gonna think of something outside of the box. So let's just be ridiculous. Let's make the crystals have the information, or let's make this flower be the thing that this plant is the thing that's going to be spreading technology.
I have to cut in and
it's
say,
like that great French cartoon there, Amazing Worlds or Amazing Plant. Well, whatever.
I don't know.
There are some similar kind of concepts where it's like you're not going to come up with a crazy enough idea to say how can we can say this is really different and really advanced. So advanced we can't even comprehend how the crystal would hold that information, which is strange because now we do.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Well, it's funny because speaking of the flower thing, Marlon Brando's original idea, you know about this, right? He wanted Jarell to be, was it a ham sandwich? Or a bagel?
A bagel.
A bagel, right.
Yeah, I don't know how serious he was about that, but it's a good anecdote.
Sure.
If you watch those scenes as well, speaking of Brando, if you watch his eyes, they were really smart the way they did the scene because they have projections of the other members of the council around. So his eyes are always darting around, and you assume he's looking at the other members of the council, but really he's just reading his lines off of different points in the room. Even if you watch his scene with Susanna York and they're over top of the the crystal that the baby's in, the ship. You can see they've placed lines inside the ship, and he's just he picks it up here, he picks it up there.
Sure.
But somehow it works. It's a genius.
His delivery is still perfect, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
he's worth $1 million.
Well, and I think they say he got paid like $200,000 per word if you break it down or something.
Wow.
Like the thing is
but that's it's similar to the casting of Alec Guinness in Star Wars.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, very first scene, Marlon Brando, serious Marlon Brando. This is a serious movie. There's an alien planet with alien technology, and they're going to banish these supervillains. It's a really, it just sets the tone right away.
God, I wish the budget was there for part 2.
Well,
I wish they. I don't want to get into it because that. But when you talk about that, because it's a beautiful setup. And all of a sudden, where's the money?
We'll talk about that in a few weeks.
Anyway.
But anyway.
The only thing I don't like about the opening sequence is that we never see Vonda, the woman that comes up and tells Jarell he's wrong about the sun's not going to explode, whatever. We see like the other council members kind of get their comeuppance, like, oh, what's happening as the planet explodes? We never see her.
That's a good point.
It's the more we talk about it, the more I think about how it can reflect today's political climate. Yeah. Right? It's this, no pun intended.
Yes.
It's like people warning about this, the scientists, I've studied this, and then the politicians going, no. Planet's going to be fine, and everything's under control. No!
Well, and we should also point out...
What a violent destruction, though.
All, like, falling through the air.
There's one shot in that sequence where the camera is rotating as a person is falling. It's one of my favorite shots in the whole film. I love that shot.
Right. Well, and here's the thing is, there's something about this movie, more than Star Wars, more than Indiana Jones... When certain scenes begin, I get like a feeling like, oh no, it's coming. So, and that's one of them where, oh no, once the earthquakes start, it's coming, and you know you're going to go through that pain again, right?
I would say the editing is also quite modern. Like, there's a really nice moment in those opening scenes with General Zod where... he tries to plead with Jarell. Come on, join us. Mm-hmm. You'll be second only to me, and blah, blah, blah. And then he finally realizes, like, it's not going to work.
Fuck you.
And he starts to scream, and they go to these extreme close-up of his eyes and his mouth. And it's a very stylistic choice that you don't really see in 70s filming. Like, you see it in spaghetti westerns and things like that.
You see it in European film.
Yes.
Mm. Yeah.
But it's a real, like, there's some bold editorial choices in the movie that hold up, that help the movie hold up,
That's and you know what, we'll get to some more of those later for sure. I also want to point out that just the concept of the Kryptonian Council projected as faces brilliant.
Yes.
What is it? It's probably just rear projection, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like that. I remember once I was on vacation with my cousins. We were at like Lake Hall or something like in Northern Ontario, and we were looking up, and there was a full moon. Okay, and we were looking up, and we were staring, just taking in the beauty of nature. And then he looks at me, guilty. You know what I mean? And we all knew what he meant, even though it wasn't a 1-to-1. But like, yes, we get it. It's just that it was beautiful, and again, it gets your imagination. And when you go back to it, you don't question it. It's not like that, that meme that's going around from Titanic of the woman watching Titanic, and she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe how fake this is." Like there's shots in Titanic that look like a video game.
Yeah.
That look like a 90s video game. But other than the blue screening and a couple things in this movie, the special effects hold up.
They do. Like, the design is very good. I will say that the shots of the Kryptonian planet with the big dome, and,
the miniatures.
The miniatures are like, it's really hard to. I think that's one of the downsides of modern technology in cleaning these films up. Because if you saw them projected, it would have grain and dirt and scratches and things, and you wouldn't necessarily see that, that's a model.
Right.
But when it's so cleaned up and it's in 4K, it's so obviously a model that it does take you out of it.
Sometimes that destroys it,
Right.
4K and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. You know what's funny? Okay, so I don't have the new 4K transfer, whatever, 8K. I have the one from a few years ago. I swear, when Krypton exploded, I could see.
You can see the curtains.
I can see
string
curtains.
or whatever.
You can see it's just a model in a studio.
Yes.
100%.
You can 100% see the back curtains.
Yep.
Because
Remember when Blu-ray came out? They said you could see the glass when the snake and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes,
you could see the reflection of the glass in front of it.
So I know. Okay, we're gonna move on from Krypton. Helen, do you have anything to contribute, or do you want to talk about anything with? Do you remember the planet?
Is this weird to hear these?
No, and I'm remembering certain things as you guys talk about it, but I honestly, because I have not seen it since I was a kid. I don't have anything to chime in at this point, but as soon as I do,
Okay.
We're going to leave soon, though.
Okay.
Right? Because we have to eat, right? We have to eat dinner at this
I
late.
have pizza that I bought for you, but okay. But anyway,
you're going to need your food in it. But I was going to say, I wanted to talk about the influence of the synergy between that film and just merchandise and fast food, and how right after that my brother and I ran out and started buying comic books. It wasn't Superman comic books first, then the movie. It was the movie, then running out to buy.
Yes.
that's how it was for me too.
Superman versus Muhammad Ali.
Sure.
Insane things, and buying the Superman paraphernalia, whatever it was, the lunchbox, or it was mostly comic books with us. But then you'd get the glass with Superman, and then it would be like, other things, and that really built on it. So when Part 2 was coming out, it was like a Part 2, like Empire Strikes Back.
Sure.
That strange decade in the 80s with Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Superman.
Star Trek, Wrath
Well,
of Khan.
Star Trek was a little later and a little too intellectual,
Sure.
let's say, for the average 9-year-old, right? Especially the first movie was just...
Yeah, that was different. Yeah.
It's a smart film, and not for children.
Right.
But these other films, adults can enjoy, and they were fun, almost like a Warner Brother cartoon, right?
Sure.
And also fun for kids, just to fantasize that you have these powers. But because I want to touch on the actors.
Sure.
And the casting.
Sure.
Because I don't want to leave before you talk about a little bit of the casting of the villain, who today, even if he was as young as he was then, you would say, no way. He's no threat. Mm-hmm. He's just a common-looking guy.
Right.
Which is Gene Hackman.
Yes.
No one would... Nowadays, they need some muscle freak or some scary-looking muscle guy.
Well, they establish him. They establish him right off the bat because the first thing he does is kill that cop that goes down the subway tunnel.
Yeah,
with
as a
no,
psychopath,
with literally no second thought about it, and he's making jokes 2 seconds later.
I think before you even see his face, he kills him.
Right.
And that. So the first thing you even know about this.
I think
guy
his
is
best
that
line
just...
is in his first scene when he says when Otis comes in and he says. it's amazing that that brain can generate enough power to keep those legs moving.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
such a good joke.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, his first of all, I've watched this movie with some people and they don't like the humor in those scenes. I still laugh every time Otis comes on the screen, when Otis knocks over the lamp, when Otis gets the black eye, like everything. And and Lex Luthor too, like Lex Luthor is funny.
Because he's abusing Otis?
No, they just
he's a psychopath.
Oh, I
What's
know.
the point anyway?
Yeah, it's like the reveal though, right? Like you see them kind of go back into the van, and you hear
Oh,
like a
yes.
tussle, and then the next thing,
Yes.
it's like a cut to
Yes.
him, and he's got the black eye.
But
Like
even
that's
even
great.
even the secondary characters like Otis and Miss Tessmacher, like Miss
Superstars,
Tessmacher feels like a real person in that situation. Like, yeah, she's kind of the mole or the mall, but she actually has a real moment of compassion for Superman. She actually has a real moment of like, she realizes the stakes when her own mother is part of the destruction, right? So it like even that character, which you could write off as like the bombshell or whatever, she's 3-dimensional. She actually has some
absolutely.
humanity to her.
She's
you know?
strong and she plays a role. It's actually a real role.
Yeah.
And what's the other actor's name? Otis, famous actor, huge.
What's his name?
Ned
Beatty.
Beatty.
Ned Beatty.
Yes. Ned Beatty.
Ned Beatty.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that this is more of a social commentary. That it's funny that when you see him walking around New York, and you see the New York crowd, how svelte everybody is in 1978, probably shot in 1976, 77, and how he is like not that big.
Right,
Compared to what we are now, but they have that music from the score. John Williams, like almost like he's the elephant march.
Yeah.
the elephant
Trombone. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And then you look at him, you go, he's my size.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, there is a direct correlation between the synergy between these super movies, I'll just call them this,
Sure.
and the fast food industry, and Coca-Cola, and Pepsi, and junk food. So it's kind of interesting how you see this character who's supposed to be this big, overweight, bumbling, fumbling doofus, and he's like the common man now.
Sure, he's
It's
average.
like,
You're right,
yeah.
you're right.
And they keep on talking about his weight and his clumsiness.
Okay, best joke in the whole movie from him is when Lex Luthor is showing Superman the real estate on the map, and he's going through.
Yeah.
What is it? Lexville, Luthor,
Otisburg?
Otisburg. Otisburg?
Just a little bitty
A little bitty place, Mr. Luthor. Okay. That is the fact that he's in the middle of explaining his master plan. He's going to kill 1 million people, and they throw that joke
It's
in.
a perfect way to kind of break up the exposition, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also geography lesson.
Yes.
And also the fact that he's actually explaining redlining in that scene.
Right.
Yeah.
What's redlining?
Redlining is when banks decide that they're no longer going to loan to a certain area because they have other land that they've invested in, they want to resell.
Gotcha.
So they'll say, Mike, you know what? We're not going to give you the $500 loan to paint your house, but we will give you a $100,000 loan if you move to Lakeshore. Right? So that's what they did to Detroit. They literally draw a red line around it. So Lex Luthor literally was saying, I'm going to buy all this useless land. I'm going to put a red line. We're going to sink this land. So the euphemism is we're going to make this all turn to garbage and worthless land. And now I have all my valuable land. So I always thought that was funny in retrospect.
You know what? And it also goes to show you can only write a smart character if you're kind of smart yourself, right? So the writers, whether it would be Tom Mankiewicz or whatever, they're smart guys. And then if you talk about the template for superhero films, you go from this to, is it Batman and Robin, where Arnold Schwarzenegger's scheme is to freeze Gotham, right? That's how far we fall after this. But
just to, I mean, obviously, if we're gonna still stay on the casting path,
sure.
there is no movie without Christopher Reeve.
Oh,
like it doesn't. We would not be talking about it. The way that you know that Christopher Reeve is 100% perfect is that even though the third movie and the fourth movie are absolutely terrible, he's still perfect in the role.
Yes.
He maintains the tone, the serious tone of the first two movies in 3 and 4.
Yep.
Nothing around him has that tone. You have, a crosswalk guy fighting a stop hand guy, like animated fight, like totally Looney Tunes. The tone is completely wrong in the third one. But Christopher Reeve, that's why it's never really been better. Like Henry Cavill is fine, he's good, but like nobody has beat.
I agree.
That
You're right.
casting.
He's like Peter Cushing is in these Hammer films.
Yes.
Where even though there's paper mache monsters and ridiculousness going around, you come in and you go, I believe it.
Yeah, he never winks. You know what I mean?
You know what?
And Christopher Reeve is, yes, the guy's whatever 6'3" and a giant, and at that time maybe like, uncommonly handsome. He's a common person.
Yeah.
He's not so handsome like this new Superman, like really ripped, really handsome, a model.
Yes.
He's a model.
Yes.
Where Christopher Reeve is just, he's a good looking man.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's his character
Even
that makes him more attractive.
Even slightly strange looking.
Yes.
Which suits the alien role.
He's actually, it's compared to, say, George Reeves. George Reeves is kind of more handsome. Christopher Reeve has like a bony type face, and you're right, he's a little bit odd looking. He doesn't quite look like the Superman of the comic books, but that also helps him play Clark Kent better, I think.
Yes.
He's
His transformation into Clark Kent is like, it makes me believe that somebody can actually mistake and not know the difference between
You're
the
right.
two.
I'm glad you brought that up. So that's what I was thinking.
That moment in the apartment where he's like thinking about
he doesn't look
revealing
like
himself.
Superman. You wouldn't even
he's
consider
like
him.
hunched over, and then he just like that
Takes the
small
glass-
adjust of like his shoulders, and he takes the glasses off. It's like a completely different person.
and he's like, there's something I have to tell you, Lois. And then he gets scared. I was just thinking,
even in the comics,
perfect,
even in the comics, they draw him differently, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't
That's
buy
cheating,
it.
that's cheating,
whatever,
yeah.
it's fine. It's like a comic book.
Yeah,
or whatever,
no, that
but
he is a very good actor, and people tend to forget like the other roles that he's played,
like Time Machine and the one I have right over there, Death Trap. He's a
Death
great
Trap,
actor.
And he's a freaking good. He's a real actor.
Yes.
Right.
You know what? I'm glad you brought up Peter Cushing, because I think, and I want to give a shout out to British actors, and I think the reason why they're better than American actors is because even when they're in bad movies, they take the job seriously, and that's why Peter Cushing, you put him in anything, he's good. Christopher Lee,
Alec Guinness.
It doesn't matter what they're doing. All the Doctor Who's. They may have been in a terrible episode, but they all took it seriously, right? And I think that's what sets them apart. And that's also why Christopher Reeve was able to carry through all 4 movies, right? So, okay, we talked about Gene Hackman, we talked about Christopher Reeve. Let's talk about Margot Kidder.
I think
let's talk about Mark Kidder, then I'll leave.
I think she's great in the first movie. I think her scenes that were directed by Richard Donner in the second movie are good. I think that Richard Lester, when he took over the second movie, didn't know how to use her. She's very good at sort of one... I find her a little bit one note. I think that's why she never really had a career outside of Superman movies.
Other than De Palma, a couple De Palma
Yeah, but
films.
that's even before Superman.
Yeah, right.
Right? So, like, she's great in Superman 1. Like, she's perfect.
Yeah.
But I find her in the sequels, it's diminishing returns.
Sure.
But I think that she was cast really well in Superman 1, and she plays it perfectly.
Yep.
You think that... See, she's strong, that's for sure. And even as a 9-year-old or 8-year-old, whatever I was, like she was smoking.
Yeah.
That put me off.
Yeah,
I mean, I got to be honest with you, and I know there was a scene where Superman goes, "Oh, smoking's bad for you." Like, go heaven, thank heaven, not yet. You don't have any problems.
Like they just cast Rachel Brosnahan from Mrs. Maisel as the new Lois Lane, and I'm like, yes, I buy her way more as Lois Lane than I think Margaret Kidder. But I don't dislike Margaret Kidder. I think she's great in the first movie. I think in the second movie, I find her a little bit annoying.
I think a lot of things are annoying in the second movie for reasons that you understand. But for me, Margot Kidder, even though she's Canadian, that was like, oh, she's Canadian. Yeah, that was like a big thing.
Oh, Black Christmas, that's right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought, like, even once again, like, my brother and I, like, just knew. We would talk, like, I don't think she's going to age well. Or she's...
Well, the smoking didn't help, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that a Carrie Fisher... I know this... I don't know if it was my brother and I who talked about, like, we thought, oh, you know who would have been perfect?
Yes.
Is Carrie Fisher.
Yes.
The way she was a strong...
Yes.
type
Sure.
like person in Star Wars that you would believe would get crap done, but also
Yeah.
you know you'd believe falling in love,
Sure.
like
Yes.
like the Harrison
Yeah.
Ford character,
Yes.
right? But I
She's perfect in the first movie, and so I don't want to seem like we're slamming her.
No.
yeah, she doesn't destroy the movie. It's
I
actually
can't-
still a great, like I said, the perfect film.
It's hard for me to imagine other actors playing Superman beside Christopher Reeve.
Of course.
But I can imagine other
Yes.
actors playing
Right.
Lois
Yes,
Lane.
that's a good.
I will point out that Margot Kidder, for whatever she is, the woman who played Lois Lane in Superman Returns, who was that again? Was completely lifeless. Amy Adams, I'm sorry, completely lifeless.
Yeah,
No
she's
charisma.
great, but
Yeah.
she's not.
Yeah.
She's not Lois Lane.
no.
She doesn't have that spark. Lois Lane is like, you know, I just read the 2 or 3 actresses she's based on. Think of a Howard Hawks screwball comedy. She's got to be quick-witted. She's got to be fast. She's got to be smart. She's got to be tough. Like Phyllis Coates in season 1 of Adventures of
I'm
Superman.
going to say Phyllis Diller.
No, yeah, like Phyllis Diller. No, like Phyllis Coates in The Adventures of Superman, like captured by a gangster and picking up a bottle and smashing it over his head.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
what Lois Lane has to be able to do.
Well, that's
And
what I believe
Amy
Margot
Adams-
Kidder could do.
Right.
She is tough.
Yes.
Right.
It is the right casting. It just doesn't have the same longevity, I think.
Right.
And it just and as it was petering out, it was really embarrassing.
Yeah.
As it got
Yeah.
later.
Part 2, part 3, it was like, oh god. Even part 3, like now she's no longer in love with.
Yeah, it was like a bit
It's like,
part.
hey,
and then
here's another woman over here you could fall in love
she's
with.
back for
Pretty
part
We'll
4.
talk about Annette O'Toole
Why?
later.
Yeah.
But Helen, I want to know. So let's talk Christopher Reeve as Superman.
Oh, what do I think of that?
Yeah, what do you think of Christopher Reeve?
Oh, I think he's amazing, and I agree with everything that you guys were saying. I feel like he kind of shaped that thing. I mean, because I was so young, of when I was growing up, I remember seeing someone who kind of looked like maybe, let's say, a little bit nerdy or something. I'm like, and I remember thinking, yeah, but there could be something else going on there.
Uh-huh.
You know, so we kind of set that up, like in
Yeah.
the sense of I remember like seeing guys growing up, and when I started looking at boys, and I'd be like, well, he's a little bit nerdy, but you know, he's kind of got that Clark Kent thing going
Sure.
on. So I mean, for me, again, I was so young.
That's an interesting.
But I
Take on
do
it.
remember it kind of, that would have been my first experience of seeing someone who transformed, you know,
That
from one
But-
character to another and becoming that super.
And I want to say quickly, it may seem ridiculous to say that about a fictional character, but I feel the same thing about Agent Scully.
Okay.
Even though she didn't
Yeah.
transform, the fact that she was a little bit aloof but super intelligent, and she was tough and she had a good job, it actually transformed my perceptions of women, of what women could be. It sounds weird, but it's like you said about Superman. It's like if every guy on TV is in the 70s is Burt Reynolds or whoever, and then all of a sudden Christopher Reeve comes along, it does change your perception.
well,
of
at least
things,
the
right?
character of Clark Kent.
Clark Kent.
And-
But there can be something
And I never really thought of
that
it
you
that
don't
way.
know
And
about or that's hiding underneath.
right,
Right.
in that perspective, to say, well, this is maybe the first time. Well, maybe Cary Grant would be another.
Yes.
That kind of quote unquote nerd who can be a handsome leading role, other than just
Right.
like some
And I just
model
want
or
to make
muscle
something clear. I
person.
don't just focus on, you know, how hunky some actors are and stuff, but I was so young that it's the thing
Sure.
that is really, and I have not seen it since. So for me,
Gonna have
it's
to
this
see it again.
visual of, you know, that I'm just remembering these visuals as you guys are talking about it. And even Lois Lane, I remember she had really nice legs. I do remember that. So like, in my mind, and I also believe what, you know, I agree with what you guys were saying, that she had gumption, you know, she was strong, and yeah, she
Independent.
and
Totally.
independent.
And
So she did work in the first one, and I do agree with everything that you guys were saying about it. Just kind of petered out after. So
what is that club in New York? The big one during that same time the movie was made?
CBGB's?
No. Punk.
Oh, you mean Club
The cocaine club.
54?
Studio.
oh,
Studio
Studio 54.
No doubt Margot Kidder.
Yo.
Oh,
Rock
for
the
sure.
house at Studio
For
54.
sure was in like a sequin,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
dress
You
and
just know that they were
cigarette.
Studio 54ing it at that
Yeah.
time, right? Like,
So should we move on to we sort of skipped over the Smallville stuff.
Well, we want to talk about Smallville, and Marshall, I know that you're
I don't do Smallville because.
Oh, what are you talking?
Okay, can we talk about Glenn Ford?
Never mind. I thought you were talking about the
The TV show?
series.
No.
No, we're talking about
Oh,
actual
yes.
Smallville.
Can we talk about Glenn? We're
Yeah.
still on casting. Can we talk about Glenn Ford?
Yes,
He's in 2
perfect.
scenes, and he's
Perfect.
perfect.
He's perfect.
I've never
The
seen
Little
an actor.
Rascal.
Yeah, I've never seen an actor just.
No, you're
just-
talking about Perry White. Perry White was a little rascal.
Yeah, that's Jerry.
the editor of the
Cooper.
Daily Planet.
Yeah, Glenn
He
Ford.
was that's.
Cooper,
that's
something-
that's
Gary
Jackie
Cooper.
Cooper.
Jackie
he was
Cooper.
he was a little rascal.
Jerry-
and by the way,
yeah, Jackie
the
Cooper.
first Perry White from the Adventures of Superman or Superman serial was
You're
also a
talking
little
about the
rascal.
dad.
You're talking about Glenn Ford.
Yes.
Pa Kent.
Right.
He's in
Sorry.
2 scenes,
Yeah.
and he
Perfect.
gives
Excellent.
Clark the perfect advice. I don't know why you're here. I don't know what your gift is for. It's not to kick footballs. It's not to beat the other kids home on the road. You're here for a reason, and that sets up his entire
Yes.
arc
Yes.
in one scene. And 2 seconds later, he's dead on the ground. But he plays that like heart attack.
Why did you have to give it away? How many times have you seen it?
No, listen.
He plays that
been
heart
so
attack
long.
better than I like. If you could give an Oscar for one scene, I would give it to him for that one scene.
Listen, and
There are
that,
plenty of Oscars in this movie that should have been given.
but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
right because like I talked about that feeling when that scene starts, you're like, oh no, it's gonna happen
Every time.
And not,
Oh no.
and not
say-
only that, wait, one thing. It's like one take of him walking,
Yes.
Yeah.
one take,
Yes.
take, and then there's a couple cuts, and then when Clark is like, "Come on, a race here," whatever,
Yeah.
and then he starts to run. Oh no, and he feels his pulse.
Yeah.
It is heartbreaking. You want to talk about Gone with the Wind, the beautiful shots of him
Yes.
falling over, and
The
Clark
wheat
runs
fields,
into
yeah.
the barn, and Ma Kent
Yeah.
is sewing, and she looks over.
Jonathan. Yeah.
Oh, my god. I just watched it. I can't
Every
think about
time.
it. Yeah, it gets me every time. Yeah,
Cry, Mike.
yeah. No,
Um,
I choked up. this
Speaking
morning.
of cut scenes, now since you have the inside scoop here, I was really disappointed when I recall as a child, because maybe it's the TV child that I recall as opposed to the motion picture child. Because back then, only until I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark did I stay in the theater over and over again and watch
Sure.
that movie 16 times at the movie theater.
Sure.
Okay? Superman, I didn't see 16 times. I may have seen it 2 times
Sure.
at the movie theater, and the rest on television years after it was taken. Because back then you'd have to wait, 10 years before Superman came out on TV.
Right,
Like
right.
literally would have to do that. So to me, there was an epic scene. And it almost had like the music of 2001 when they discovered the monolith on the lunar surface, like that spooky.
when he pulls the green crystal out.
Right, but he's awoken by some thing,
Yes.
and he goes to the shed
The
or
barn.
the barn, and he looks at the barn, and he pulls off a sheet, and he pulls off something else. And then he pulls up, like he's strong, so he just pulls up this thing and it
The doors of the floor. Or
right,
whatever,
and it
yeah.
opens up and he sees the spacecraft that just looks like a rock that's been burned up. Later on, I noticed it's different. It's like it just goes from him to the bedroom. Next thing you know, he's opening the thing, and I'm like. And these are different cuts. I'm like, what is this? What happened to that?
I don't
slow move to him opening and revealing that the spaceship is
It's
calling
possible
him.
that they cut that for time, yes, in the TV version.
But my movie that I own that is the original theatrical
Yeah.
scene.
I don't remember it being dragged out. I kind of remember him just waking up and then
The
walking.
only-
But I felt that it needed to be. It's so poignant. Like that that move is so. It's like. He's going to find out that he is something different.
I'm not aware of that scene being changed. I know right after it, there's a scene where the mother wakes up and comes down. It's a deleted scene that's in the.
That has
in the,
Cheerios in it.
Yeah, it has Cheerios.
So that was
pours
extra
Cheerios.
too. That was
Yeah.
added back. I didn't know
That's
that.
added back. That was
Okay.
never in the original cut. It literally went from him discovering the green crystal to his mother looking out the window and seeing him out in the field,
found out,
and it's a direct correlation. It's like, okay, he found this, and now he's going to go off on an adventure.
Right.
But now, in the cut as it exists on some Blu-rays now, there's like this weird long scene of the mother coming down and making breakfast, and it kind of ruins that like.
It is a strange thing, but
yeah,
later you find out, like, you know, because everyone thought it was branding, like
Cheerios. Well, I'm thinking, what farmer is going to eat Cheerios?
No, but
Bacon and eggs,
this
right?
is like in some of the documentaries they say, "Hey man, we just thought that people eat Cheerios."
Yes.
Like we didn't say Cheerios is going to pay us for this, or Cheerios pay us to put these things.
The mother. Phyllis Thatcher.
She's also a great actress.
She's also great.
Phyllis Diller,
perfect,
she's
right?
also very good.
No. But okay, you wanted. Oh, go ahead.
I've got a question. The only thing really weird about the movie I found was that the crystal was green.
Which is the same color as kryptonite.
Right.
It could have been a different color. You're right.
Is that? It's just like a.
Coincidence.
That's a great point, because we see them on Krypton. Everything's clear, and we see the green is like dangerous to Superman. So why is this green good for Superman?
Well, you guys just pull up an excellent point in this front. So everything that his spaceship technically would have been.
You know
toxic.
what? Okay.
And we don't want to get into this because
this
it's going to
stuff.
explode. Because then even the whole Crystal Palace would have made him.
Can we just say
I can buy that doesn't, right? If you're going to say this crystal specifically is toxic on that planet, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So like the green kryptonite crystal is what does it.
Well, let me just say, I've been reading Superman comics for 40 years. I don't understand kryptonite.
Well, because they have red kryptonite. And
well,
green kryptonite.
no, but what I mean is that.
That's right, I forgot all
Okay, let me just say, kryptonite has existed since not from the beginning. It was invented in the radio show because the actor who played Superman needed a vacation. Like, okay, I got it. We'll make Superman sick for 2 weeks. You go on vacation, and we'll just have Jimmy Olsen do all the adventures. That's true. So the whole concept of, you're thinking, why does a piece of his planet kill him? It doesn't make sense. It wasn't until 1986 when John Byrne was rebooting Superman, which I hated, but the president of DC at the time, Jeanette Kahn, had an idea. She said, what if Krypton turned into kryptonite when it was dying, and that the pieces of the irradiated world, that's what makes it tough. Yes, that makes sense. But to just say a piece of his homeworld kills him, you could say a piece of his homeworld weakens him, because
that's what I always thought it was.
But it's not. He's dying. Like
Interesting.
And Superman,
so
he is dying there, right? But
he's
if
not
it just brought him down to like the
What's
same level.
Lex Luthor's logic? I can't remember.
I just watched it this
Wait a
morning.
second.
It doesn't like Lex Luthor's like, well, a piece of his planet.
Right.
Blah blah blah. By my calculations, 1940. He shows the magazine,
and
and
then
I'm
they're
like,
we'll kill him.
We'll kill him. You're like, why? Where's the logic?
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
make any sense, right?
Interesting, because I took it as it would make him human, right? Like it
Which
would
is
like,
logical,
make him
right?
like he would be on Krypton, which is why he had to put a necklace on him and throw him in the pool. And he's, I always took it
He's
that
drowning.
He's drowning, and it's not the kryptonite that's killing him. It's the fact that he's drowning and he's now
No, it's
more like human.
kryptonite
right?
kills him. If he's exposed to it
Interesting.
long enough, it kills
Okay.
him. So that's why it doesn't make any sense.
But
Right.
but you know what? It was very vague, and that could actually be something
Yeah,
someone could argue with concerning the kryptonite. But these are little tiny nothing
Yeah.
details
Right,
because like
that
that,
if you
I
could
could buy
change that, you would say this is if you put it on him, it would bring him back to normal strength
Sure.
comparable to us. So if it's on him, then we could fight him and shoot him with a bullet.
yeah,
Sure,
like
sure.
his powers are gone. Yeah.
Going back to casting, I do feel bad for Jeff East, who plays the young Clark Kent.
Sure.
Because not only does he not get to use his own voice, they dub Christopher Reeve over his voice, but he's got that. But he's got that terrible fake nose that doesn't match the rest of his face.
I didn't even notice that.
No? Okay, next time you watch it, look at his nose.
It's a movie for me.
It's a different color than the rest of his skin because they're trying to give him Christopher Reeve's straight bony nose.
Gotcha.
But it doesn't.
It doesn't work
It
at
doesn't
all.
work,
Right,
and
right.
and again in 4K, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Interesting.
I'm not watching
okay.
4K ever.
Okay. Anyway, listen. I know you
But
have to.
we're gonna go now because I'm hungry.
Hold on.
And I'm not eating pizza.
It's Kubota Club.
We can't.
Anyway, we'll just.
But I want to say about that kind of thing. One of my favorite movies is Oliver Stone's Nixon, and some of the flashback footage that they have during like a newsreel of Nixon, they take Anthony Hopkins and they put this big rubber nose on him
Sure.
to make it look more like Nixon. And Oliver Stone says in the commentary, like, it just was ridiculous. We said, it's the actor that's going to
Yeah.
make the character
Right.
believable. And so you don't need to try to make him look like Christopher Reeve.
Right.
Right.
Just like, in all honesty,
Implied.
Marlon Brando didn't need to put cotton in
I
his
agree.
cheeks, and neither did Robert De Niro.
I agree.
I mean, obviously Robert De Niro said, screw it. He did it. I guess I have to follow suit.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have made a damn difference. It's
Right.
because you're following the actors. And this guy, I didn't even notice the nose. And these weird obsessions with like the whole, are people going to buy it? If the casting is right,
Yeah.
people buy it. Does who's the guy who played Malcolm X?
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington doesn't
Not
look
quite,
like Malcolm
not
X.
quite.
Not even close. But you believe him. Mm-hmm. You don't need to say, "Oh, let's give him red." You know, let's make him 6 feet taller and lighten
Sure.
his hair and make his nose wider. It's like not necessary. But I didn't know that at all.
I didn't know his voice was overdubbed until years later. But one
That's
thing
kind of
about
disappointing too. That's so unnecessary also because people's
I
voices
can
change.
that I can understand because they're like, let's just keep it Christopher Reeve and not have a disconnect. But yeah, apparently that guy he doesn't have dark hair. It's
Really?
a fake nose. They don't use his voice, but he actually gives a great performance.
Right.
It's just a shame
And
Yeah.
you know, but Christopher Reeve is young enough. I mean, frick, man.
You know what
And
else?
He's such a good actor. He probably could have played.
Yeah.
he also could have played him before he started working out because he
Yes.
worked out for the role. He should have
Right.
shot all the Smallville stuff,
Yes.
then gone and worked out,
Yes.
right, for a couple months.
He also
Let's
wasn't
go
like
back in
that
time.
crazy big where they could have, even with clothing and stuff, hid his size.
Right, you're right.
For-
yeah,
yeah.
because that was all
bagging him
that
up.
was all
Yeah,
built
yeah.
up
and
after.
have guys
yeah.
bigger than him act
Yeah.
around him.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right?
Finishing up the casting.
yeah, sure,
Perry White, great. Jackie Cooper, great. Mark McClure,
Perfect.
perfect. Jimmy Olsen.
perfect.
Yeah.
Except for he doesn't have red hair.
Yeah.
But you're right. Jimmy Olsen should never be cool like in the Supergirl TV show. They cast this 6 foot something black dude, super muscular, super handsome, and I'm like, he's not Jimmy Olsen.
Right.
Jimmy Olsen has to be nerdy. He has to be
He doesn't have to be white, but he has to.
No,
but he has to
no.
embody that nerdy.
exactly. He has to
Yeah.
be young and impetuous and just of course that's Jimmy Olsen, right?
Yeah.
Does anyone remember the Jimmy Olsen from Superman Returns? I don't even know who he was. The Man of Steel, Jimmy Olsen. Apparently he was in the movie. Apparently he died. I don't know.
Yeah.
No one
I didn't
remembers
see
these-
any of those
Yeah,
movies
they're all
when I
they're all
was a kid.
garbage. Don't worry, you didn't miss
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Perry White, perfect. The actor that played Perry White in Superman Returns was it Frank Langella or somebody? They're okay.
Yeah.
And then
they did do an interesting thing. If you compare, the only thing I like about Man of Steel, or I find interesting,
Yeah.
is they show that's different than this Superman movie. Is in this Superman movie, he's young. He goes to the Fortress of Solitude. He throws a crystal. The ice castle builds, and then. Marlon Brando talked to him for 12 years.
Yeah,
Then he's an
yeah,
adult.
I know, you're
Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah, you're right, you're right.
In Man of Steel, they show him like, suddenly his X-ray vision kicks in and he's freaking out.
Right.
And those are interesting ideas to show him. Smallville did it.
Sure.
Show him growing up with his powers versus like he got a lecture for 12 years. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that that's a deficit of the movie because it does keep the pacing going, right? But it is it's two completely different ways to kind of tell that story.
it's also, to be fair, in the comics they usually skip from Superboy to Superman.
Oh yeah.
In the comics, he was Superboy. But in the Smallville TV show is literally just that gap, right?
Yes.
Which is fine. I've gone back and watched it, and Smallville's good.
It's a decent show.
Yeah, it's fine. But I get what you're saying. Like, it is a little bit odd. I know that, Marshall, you got to go.
Yeah.
But before you go, you talk about how this movie is like Gone with the Wind. And
Right.
for me, the Smallville sequence is the most
It is Gone with the
beautiful
Wind.
sequence. Like,
Shot in Canada.
Better than Gone with the
shot in
Wind,
Canada.
actually.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Because
okay.
the wheat wasn't.
Interesting.
They already had harvested the wheat in the
Kansas.
South, in the United
Yeah, yeah.
States.
Interesting. Okay.
So they had to go to Alberta, I think.
So it's
Okay.
supposed to be Kansas, but it's it's
Alberta.
Yeah.
So we have these shots again.
And then Superman 3 is Calgary.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we have so we have these 1950s cheerleaders and music. I think it was Bill Haley in the comments.
Well,
playing.
that's another interesting point. So it's Rock Around the Clock in the original theatrical cut. Then they couldn't get the rights for it. So in a lot of subsequent versions, it's not Rock Around the Clock anymore. In the TV version, it's not. It's something
Really?
else, yeah.
How does that change?
Because they have a window, right? They purchase the rights to the song for 5 years, and then 5 years later it's on TV, and they don't want to pay to update those rights, so then they just put some generic music
I didn't
there.
realize
They
it was
put
like
the
a
opening
time
theme
So
like
for
Happy
some
Days.
things,
That's
but-
interesting.
But
Saturday
it's
Night Live for
but
TV
like
shows
but
is,
it
yeah.
sets again. It sets the tone. You're like, oh, Rock Around the Clock. That's 50s.
Right.
I know that's 50s.
Right.
And when they put some other song in there,
Doesn't work.
it doesn't work.
Right.
Could I say one thing other than when they dangle Christopher Reeve on cables? That always looks great because it's real, right? It's really him. I love the effect of him running
Along the
next to
train?
Yeah.
It's so good.
It is.
love it.
It is so weird, but
And
it's good. It
super
works.
duper.
Like,
Yeah.
what is
some-
it? Is
I
it
don't.
stop motion?
No. So yeah,
It's almost like an in-camera.
they're
kind of
literally
thing.
flying him. They have a crane. He's on wires, and he's doing this at a like they're shooting at 20 frame or. Yeah, they're shooting at 20 frames a second.
Okay.
So slightly undercranked, but not so fast motion that it looks silly,
Sure.
right? And they're literally tracking him.
Yeah.
And his
I
feet
knew
are
it had
his
to be
feet
an
are
in-camera
like
thing.
8 inches off the ground.
Interesting.
But and then there's other shots like when he's in the distance and you see the smoke trail. That's a motorcycle. You can tell it's a motorcycle, but that's him.
Sure.
It's so far away. But yeah, now the close-up shots. I don't quite understand how they did those. It's almost like they mounted a camera to him when he's running. The
That's
close-up
what I
shots
mean.
kind of like
Oh, when he's cutting across the train.
It
Yeah.
looks like stop motion,
Yeah.
right?
It's
weird.
really it's one of the weird in-camera effects that don't touch it.
Right.
Leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yes,
And
yes,
that's
yes.
another
Don't
weird
fix it.
thing too, that you talk about the things they take out when young Lois Lane is in the train.
yeah. That's
It's-
a terrible scene,
so-
and it
so-
shouldn't be in there.
It's
I
not
agree.
necessary,
I agree. But
because
you're
it-
saying
it
okay
doesn't
because I
mean a
know I
thing.
saw it as a kid, so it was not the theatrical. You're saying
It's not in the
Wow,
theatrical. It was
okay.
always in the TV version.
Gotcha. So I saw it on TV then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember it. But you're right. It's
Lois,
bad.
what
It's
are
a-
you talking
Yeah.
about? You
you know,
haven't seen this.
yeah.
yet.
And
Not
then
necessary.
the other Kirk Allen doesn't even have a line.
Yeah,
It's so awkward.
It's and the coincidence that Lois is on a train.
I know.
It's like too
It's
much
bad.
of a
It's bad.
coincidence.
I don't. Maybe they just cut the line. I remember the girl seeing him running and then saying something, but I don't think.
It's her saying Lois.
Yeah.
Oh, be quiet.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, how about the
something
time
like
they
that.
spanked
Like,
that
it's
kid
just
when
like-
when then mommy,
Yeah.
Wait, wait, hold- are you leaving?
Yeah.
Okay, before you leave, Gone with the Wind, Smallville section.
Right.
We already talked about the death scene, the funeral. When Pa Kent, I swear, it's like How Green Was My Valley, John Ford. It's beautiful. This shot of the hillside and the wheat,
And
this
you don't need a
little-
big speech. You need that one line with all my powers.
Oh no, I can't! Don't say it. No, I can't. I can't.
Say it.
Crying.
No, I'm gonna cry. You're right. There's like 2 lines in the scene. It's
Yes.
beautiful. It's perfect.
And you know
So
what?
good.
Once again, it's an important. I mean, in a weird little way for young people that can't, their attention spans have shortened. It's kind of an important film. It has so many kind of life lessons and philosophy.
Yeah.
And even that thing about all my powers. I don't want to break like the billionaire's son, Dan Gilbert.
Yes.
I have billions of dollars, but my son died from a rare disease. There's nothing you can do.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's like that. Superman's dad died. What's he going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, he does something
Later.
at the end, but
Yes.
We'll talk about that later.
Superman soundtrack. But
I have
John
that on
Williams-
vinyl. Yeah.
John Williams was influenced a lot by Prokofiev, the Russian composer.
Ah.
And if you listen to Alexander Nevsky's soundtrack, it was like an old black and white silent film by fucking Potemkin. Who directed
Battleship Potemkin.
who directed that?
Oh shit, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, you could if you listen to that soundtrack, you go, "Fuck, that's the one." Just it's so gorgeous.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. Also, the main theme for Superman. is almost a direct
That's
copy.
another fucking conversation. It's about the music.
Well, hold on.
Dear Lord.
No. Here's the thing, okay?
gotta work
I love
more
John
into it.
Williams. I love Star Wars. I love Indiana Jones. This theme might be his best.
Yeah, I would
think
say
so.
it's his peak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
What was I doing the other? Remember with the kids in the car?
Yeah, you.
I played a full blast.
no, when it
That's-
starts, like
Yeah.
the way it creeps up on you,
Dun,
and
dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
and it hits that note, dun, 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 and then when it hits, fine, bum, 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 it's so.
Superman.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my
You know what
God.
I like better though is the one that goes. Bum, 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 bum,
Yeah.
bum, 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 bum,
Yes.
My favorite track is actually the villain tracks, or the when he goes into the barn and finds the crystal. That's my favorite track.
Oh, that is
Which-
an incredible.
Which one is
track.
that again?
It's like the
mysterious.
spooky one.
It's the spooky one.
yeah.
It's like
Do 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 do.
I think it's
Oh.
also it's like when you first see Krypton and then
Yes.
they bring it back with
Yes.
the
with
Fortress
the
of
creep
Solitude,
version.
and
But then they have that.
Yeah.
Like I forget the name of the actual part, like the actual composer who did that creepy. It's an Italian guy who did that stuff from 2001. But you know that
Oh,
influenced.
Yes.
Because it scares
I
the
know
fuck
what you
out
mean.
of you. Like you're waking up in the middle of the night and I'm
Yes.
gonna walk here. It's like you're walking to go see ghosts. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna go check
Yeah,
out some
exactly.
ghosts
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
what about the little drum that they use?
Oh, yeah.
for the Phantom
For the
Zone
villains, yeah.
That's
Oh.
also good too.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, it's
He
like
reuses
creepy.
that kind of weird stuff even in JFK.
It's the same. I didn't know.
He uses bongos in
I didn't know he
JFK.
did JFK, really?
Yeah, John Williams did JFK. He
Really?
did Nixon too. And they're both incredibly unique soundtracks.
Awesome.
Oh, you've seen JFK.
Okay, so do you want to just? So we talked about Smallville. Is there anything else you want to say about Smallville? We pretty much covered it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna jump to the. How far are we in? 48 minutes for Metropolis.
Yeah.
Like in the director's cut, or I
I'm
don't want to.
surprised how long this movie was.
Yes.
2.5 hours for.
Well,
like,
that's part of the reason why the theatrical cut is better, because they realized it was a long movie and they
Right.
tightened things and they got rid of scenes that didn't matter, and it flows way better.
Now in the theatrical cut, how soon do we get to Metropolis? If it's not 48 minutes, how?
But there's probably about
close.
yeah, it's probably 6 or 7 minutes difference.
Sure, which is still a huge
Yeah.
time, a long time to wait, which is fine. I'm fine with it. It's funny because I remember years ago, my little cousins were over and my mother was trying to entertain them, and she's like, "I'll put on Superman," and she was like, "I can't believe how long it takes to get to Superman."
Yeah.
But as Marshall pointed out, his kids were fine with it. You have kids. I don't know if you've shown them this movie.
I showed my daughter
Okay.
the movie, and she really enjoyed it. She didn't get bored. It's so weird and alien in the beginning.
Right.
That stuff all sustains itself. Then the planet blows up.
Right.
Okay, and then the Smallville stuff is stuff we can all relate to.
Right.
You know, it's all growing up. He's entering manhood. Whatever. I don't find that. I don't think it's a detriment to the movie at all. I think if you started the movie with Superman, it's kind of boring.
Yeah.
Right.
Even when they're in the city, before he's even Superman, it's exciting and
Yeah.
interesting. Like
Because the
every
characters
single-
are interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even every single background character is interesting and
Yeah.
has some sort of weird thing going on. Like
The encounter in the alley is great.
Let's talk
the
about-
the
let's-
alley. I love the when he's like going by and he buys the newspaper and he grabs the pretzel.
Yes,
and the dog
all that
like
stuff.
tells
It's
on it.
so-
It's
Yeah.
great.
It's so let's
yeah.
talk about this. So yeah, we start out in Metropolis. We get some establishing shots. Then we get the camera, Jimmy Olsen's camera, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
So it's a nice little shorthand. Okay, he's a reporter. He's a photographer. He's taking pictures. We see some people. Then we
Margaret
see
Kidder, yeah.
Margot Kidder.
And
posing.
her character is great because they do the same joke 3 times with her spelling, and she doesn't know how to spell rapist. She doesn't know how to spell massacre.
Right.
So you're like, oh, okay, she's really into like sensationalistic journalism.
yes.
Okay, I like they're very on the nose with it, but it's also very funny because
Yes.
because by the third joke it becomes funnier each time.
You're right. You're right. It
You
works.
know?
It works. You're right.
Yeah.
I think it also is a good build up to the reveal of the headline of like My Night with Superman,
Yes.
which is great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Which
I
also,
didn't
like,
notice that. I didn't
bounces
notice that.
off of the fact that like they did have like a night together.
Yes,
in a
sure.
sense.
Yes.
You know what? I got it. That brings up another point. This movie, because Marshall, I don't think he's seen it in 20 years. I hadn't seen it in 2 years. I thought I could get by with not watching it, but I'm going to watch it again. I didn't notice how like I don't want to say racy, but like that little line, plus Miss Tessmacher, the way that she's kind of clearly lusting after Superman. There's a couple of, like, even the line you mentioned earlier in the podcast when she says, "Do you eat?"
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a double
How
entendre.
big are you?
Yeah, how
Yeah.
big are you?
Right.
Right. There's definitely a couple lines like that.
That's maybe my favorite scene in the movie.
It's so
like, dynamic together is perfect.
Yeah,
it's
like,
perfect.
It's so good.
There's a genius special effect in that scene where it's genius because they just did it practically. Is basically when he leaves her, it's actually a rear projection of him flying away, and then the real Christopher Reeve comes in as Clark Kent.
I was going to ask,
and
about
it's all in
that.
one shot, right?
Yep.
So it's literally
That's awesome.
it's perfect.
You know what? It's funny because, we're all film buffs. I love, Hitchcock. He's all about cutting. This movie is an example of long takes. Like, that's one, right?
But long takes, but they're sustained because first of all, you got Jeffrey Unsworth, who's an amazing cinematographer.
Yes.
He's doing this gauzy. It's anamorphic lenses, so you've already got like. When you're on an alien planet, you're on Krypton, the edges are all blurry because you're using anamorphic lenses, and it just makes it look more real. You see less of the tape and the paint and whatever they used to make those sets. And in the Smallville scenes, he throws a ton of, I think they used to use like pantyhose or whatever, but he's using like a ton of gauze over the lens, so everything's very dreamy. When we get to Metropolis, he goes for more of a straight look.
Yes.
But then when Superman is Superman again, we go back to the gauzy. He tends to use a lot of gauzy on Margaret Kidder, like you would photograph an old actress back in the day. You would try to dream like her up a bit with the lensing. You know?
Right.
But going back to your point, the reason that you can hold on these takes is because the blocking is really good.
Yeah.
And the framing is really good. The whether it's Donner dictating the framing or Jeffrey Unsworth, the cinematographer, you can hold on a shot if people are changing positions within the shot, and you're moving the camera on a dolly once in a while, and you don't need to cut.
Right.
Even though, like I said, the editing in this movie is actually very well done. Like this scene of him when he's young and he's running past the train and he crosses over the train. If you watch that, there's like 8 cuts of him getting from the point where he's about to cross in front of the tracks and the train actually passing. There's like 8 cuts, and you'd think, oh, that would be choppy, but it's actually really well done. I think it was out of necessity.
Sure.
There's a lot of quick cuts in this movie that I think that are like whenever Superman takes off, it takes 4 cuts to get him in the air because of the technology. They pull him up with a crane, or Christopher Reeve pretends to jump. Then they pull him up with the crane. Then they have him. Then they have a a green screen or a blue screen, and
Well, I will say though, I think that surprisingly, even though the green screen is like you can clearly see it's a green screen at times. I think that they were so smart with how they staged everything. And they really clearly thought out exactly every single shot going from one to the other, how he was going to turn, because I believed everything.
If you watch the
like it's so good. Normally it's like cheesy. He's just like in one position. You would think, right? And it's just like.
That's Reeve, though. That's Reeve understanding, like, I need to... It's like if you have a puppet or something, or a fake animal in a movie or something, it has to always be moving. So I think when he's flying, he's like, I always have to be arcing or repositioning or, extending.
One of the first scenes, too, of him flying, like, at night, he's like... He's got, like, his hand out, his right hand out, and it's, like, full force, and then... He switches to his left hand out, and then he makes it a fist. And then he spreads it. It's almost like he's using his arms. He's
always
as like
transitioning.
A bird. Like it's like he's like floating, and you can feel the weight
if you
of him like floating on the in between, like the air, like a bird does. It's crazy.
Right.
The very first shot when he flies, when we see the first flying shot in the Fortress of Solitude, if you watch carefully, so that was one of the very first flying shots they did. And if you watch carefully, you can see Christopher Reeve's hair is longer. Like, I think that was actually, like, almost a test shot.
Sure.
And they liked it so much that they put it in the movie. But he doesn't quite look... His costume's not quite the same. His hair's not quite the same. I think... and I believe they mentioned something about that in one of the making of documentaries.
I think they say that was the first time that it worked.
Yes.
That and I think that the banking was an accident, right?
Right.
It was like, oh, I'll just do this, but it worked in the shot,
Yeah.
and everyone on the crew was like stunned silence and then applause.
Yes.
Like, we can't believe it worked. It looks perfect,
Wow.
right?
Yes.
So okay, let's talk about the setup of Metropolis. We're introduced to Perry White. We're introduced to Jimmy Olsen. Everything's working, and then right away, I think Lex Luthor comes right after that, right?
Yeah, it's Otis leads us to Luthor.
Yes.
The two cops are okay. They're kind of forgettable.
Yeah.
But whatever. They're just fodder for the
Sure.
story. Otis leads us to Luthor, who introduces Tessmacher, and we get their whole subplot.
Right.
I find that stuff great. Like, in the extended TV versions, they add a lot of Luthor and Otis and Tessmacher. And that's too much.
Sure.
They're great as, like, small vignettes.
Right.
You know?
And again, it all works. I think I'm fine with the tone. We talked about that. Then, right away, he kind of hints at his plot. He hints at real estate,
Yes.
I think. So right away,
And then you've got Superman's first night out, where he
So, yes, again, we talked about the knots in the stomach. As soon as we see the overhead shot of Metropolis, and we're taking this lane for a quick ride. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no, here it comes.
Yeah.
She gets on the helicopter, the cables catch and
Yeah.
whatever. Again, we should point out, this is 1978, so it's coming out of disaster films, right?
Yes.
Like Airport, what else? Poseidon Adventure.
Yes.
This was the age of the
Yes.
disaster film, right? So we have to have a spectacle. We can't do, like in the Superman Action Comics #1, he lifts a car over his head. Great image, but we got to have something bigger, right?
Let me ask you, in that scene, it's one of the only things that maybe dates the movie, or it's
Okay.
a little campy, is when the guy in the street's like,
The black
"Ooh,
dude?
that's a bad outfit,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's dated. That's
Yeah,
dated.
that
That's
dates
rough.
it a little bit, but it's
But Christopher Reeve, excuse me, or whatever he says.
Yeah.
He's so polite. Oh, just
Yes.
give me a minute here. I
Yeah.
just got to go save this woman, right? Like,
Exactly.
that was great.
yeah, it's
But-
not like the guy in the phone booth in Superman 2.
Oh, that was hilarious, but terrible.
But the
Yeah.
wrong tone.
Yeah, wrong tone.
That's
wrong-
the difference between Donner and Lester. Lester's a good director in his own
Yeah.
right, but that's why Superman 2 feels kind of weird, because
Yes.
it's got Donner's tone and then Lester's tone, and Lester is like, I'm not doing Donner's tone. I
Right.
want comedy. I want
Yes.
comedy, and that's why Superman 3 is like a total departure.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, it's one of the few campy moments, but it's okay. We
It's not terrible.
You know what I think helps actually is the fact that we don't get this like long moment afterwards of him and Lois together, and it's like, my day's done.
Yeah.
The fact that he's like, all right, I'll
Yeah.
see you later. And
Who
he goes
are you?
off.
A
We
friend.
have this
Yeah.
huge montage now of him
Well, wait.
going throughout the city and
Let's-
saving.
Let's just
that's great.
we just skipped over the climax. Let's talk about the
Yeah, right,
helicopter.
sure.
Yeah, let's talk about the helicopter. This scene is so well done.
Yes.
We've got this giant skyscraper, and the helicopter is tipping over the edge, and everyone on the street is looking up at
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
It's so well done. And then she falls, and everyone's screaming, and that's when the music kicks in.
Yeah.
I think that dun, 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 dun,
And the editing and the effect shots and everything, like, whatever, yeah, you can tell it's rear projection or blue screen or whatever, but the editing and the way it's put together, it's really well done.
Yes.
Like, I would put, if you took away, okay, the effects maybe look a little dated, if you take that out of the equation, I would put that action scene up against anything you'd see
I
today
agree,
in cinemas,
I agree.
you know?
Yes, no, you're right, because I just rewatched it today, and you're right. When he sees her, then he changes into his, first of all, when he changes, and he rips the shirt open, holy
Yeah.
shit. Then when he flies up, you're right, there's a certain shot where he flies up, where you're like, it's like you said, they're cutting, and they're planning exactly to, okay, I can hold this shot for this many
Yes.
frames,
Yeah.
and this shot for that many frames, and it works perfect. And then he catches her,
Yes.
and it's like perfect, right? And then there's actually one awkward shot when he's holding. Did you notice when he's holding the helicopter? His arm is so ready to break the opposite, like. He's
Really?
yeah. He's like holding her, and he's Christopher Reeve. He's a great actor, and he's smiling, but his arm is ready to bust. But fine. But he's holding that helicopter, and he's flying up, and it's so well done. And then he drops her down, and she's like, completely mesmerized. And he's like, "Well, I hope this doesn't, turn you off to flying. It's statistically, it's still the safest way to travel." Blah
Yes,
blah blah. And
yes.
it's just everything's perfect.
That's great writing there.
Yeah.
Like, they do that a lot in that opening night of his adventures, or his first night as Superman, because, he you've got the gag of the thief climbing up the
Sure.
building, and Superman standing there, and the guy's like, whoa, and he falls, and then he hands him over to the other cop and takes off, and the cat,
Yes.
and then like everything's a bit of a wink, humorous, like because it gets really serious later when he has to save the world from
Sure.
from the missiles, but. It works. Like the tone there, it's just the right amount of serious action with some comedy in there.
Well, here's the thing. I want to talk about the sequence because when I said that there was one sequence in the movie that I didn't think worked, I think this is it, okay? Because...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because to me, this is where the plot of the movie screeches to a halt a little bit. And we get kind of the M. Night Shyamalan, I'm going to go and chase ghosts.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You've seen the movie 50 times.
Sure.
Right? Or whatever.
Sure.
The audience is waiting the whole movie to see Superman. They
Of
waited
course.
like 45 minutes. They got a little teaser at the ice castle or whatever, right? And they got a little teaser when he stops the bullet in the alley.
Yes, which is
right?
great.
But this is like they've been waiting this whole movie, so they're going to show him off. They're going to show you he interrupts a what is it a robbery. They get on a boat and yeah, it's a little. Once you've watched it many times, you're like, you know, it seems like an odd collection of vignettes, but.
Well, it's funny because... Okay, go ahead.
No. The only scene for me that dates the movie that I don't like, and you and I have discussed this before, is the sing song or the speaking, like the poem in the air.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. But I want to say one thing that's interesting because you mentioned how this is the template for all superhero movies. They actually repeated this in Spider-Man 1.
That's right.
When Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man,
yeah.
I'm going to go solve this crime and then catch this bad guy
Yeah.
and do this and fly through the...
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's just a montage of a bunch of different
Scenarios.
which
Yeah.
is fine. I do think that the boat chase goes on a little too long,
Yeah.
right? That's maybe the one. Like, the climbing on the building is okay. The cat is fine.
Yes.
But yeah, the boat chase goes on a little bit too long. The line is a little bit cheesy. Oh, bad vibrations? That's a little bit cheesy.
Yeah.
But I can accept it.
Yeah.
But then after that, help me out. It goes. What's the next thing that happens? Does it go right into Lex Luthor?
I think so. I think the boat was the last one, if I'm remembering
Oh no!
correctly.
In the director's cut, now it goes into this Marlon Brando montage. Then it goes into a scene that I'm glad they cut in the theatrical, where he's standing watching a TV, and isn't it Richard Donner who's watching the TV with him? He's like, "Oh, you believe that a man can fly?" It
Yeah.
was Richard Donner,
Yes,
right?
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Did you see that scene in your version?
No.
There's a scene.
I think that people are watching him on TV, but I don't think that there's
Yeah,
a moment
they
where he's...
pan back and it's Clark Kent watching the TV with the director.
Right.
Here's the weird thing I never understood. What they cut to next is at the Daily Planet.
Okay.
And they're showing the newspapers. Cape Warner,
Yes,
Sun City.
right,
this and this and that. Well, the one thing I never understood is, are those bad, like 1978, we have to airbrush these mock-ups of flying shots? Like, or are they like, were the newspapers doing artistic interpretations of what people saw?
Yes.
Or are they supposed to be photos
I know
that
what you're
somehow
saying, yeah.
somebody got up in the air? It's not really clear because it is Christopher Reeve in the photos.
Yes.
Like, but he's painted in flying in the air, and I
Right.
never understood. Are they because who got that good a look at him
Sure.
to paint a likeness of him, or are we supposed to believe that somehow people were taking snapshots? Out of building windows,
Right,
and got
right.
these shots. I never quite understood
Yeah.
what they're going for there.
I also didn't understand if Perry White was saying these other headlines are bad and ours have to be good, or is it that
Yeah.
we have to scoop them, or I don't know. But,
Yeah.
But okay, so I like, because then I think then it goes into the whole Lois date scene.
Yes.
Which we've talked about a little bit,
so
but
I think we can just go right past that one.
oh come on, let's just say the whole time they're on the balcony, I think it's magic.
Yeah.
I think it's magic.
Do you think Superman was peering past the pink undergarment?
Okay, can we just say
Or do you think he's
that was a bit weird? I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, we talked about
and
this.
she was like, she asked after, she like, do you like the color pink?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
let's
like-
just say this movie's great, but there was that slight undertone of, well, who the hell is writing this? Yeah, like what color are my underwear? And then she walks away, and he's like, pink. Yeah, that was like weird, because
Yeah, I mean,
but it's fine.
it's tame by nowadays standards, but yeah, it's not. it's more the humanity,
Sure,
I guess.
sure.
You know, sure,
And
he has a sex drive. Okay, whatever.
And it's also, because it's Superman, it's a little bit weird because it's Superman. But yeah, there is that little weird undertone there. I don't like I just found this out today. You know the whole narration in her head, like, can you read my mind? Apparently, Margot Kidder was supposed to sing lyrics to that song. That would have demolished the movie. That would have wrecked it.
As it is now, I'm like, this scene.
If they could just cut, like, the whole part of them flying's fine.
Yes,
but-
he drops her, he saves her. Okay.
Sure, cut.
Yes.
And then returns her. Yeah, but the
Yes.
whole... Can you read my mind? That was a lapse in the film. I don't know.
It is a bit too, like, I feel like, alright, you show me there's an alien planet out in space. Okay, I believe it. He's an alien, he came here, he's got superpowers. Okay, I believe it. But the laws of physics and gravity do not apply when he's flying her and he's holding her by her fingertips.
Yeah, I know.
And there's barely a breeze on her.
I know.
And it would be like minus 10 up there.
I know.
Like I'm like,
He even says, "Oh, maybe I should go get a jacket." He's like, "You'll be fine."
Yeah,
You'll be fine.
you'll
Yeah,
be
you're right.
fine.
Yeah.
Like what?
Also, I've seen the movie a million times. Why does Superman drop her? Like, why does he not
Yes.
know?
What's
Maybe I shouldn't hold her
by her fingertips.
by her fingertips, right? Like, it's ridiculous. And then
Think about it. If
and
you're
then-
flying at that speed, holding onto her, like, why aren't they going? They shot.
I know.
It just doesn't make any sense. But okay, we can get past it.
Right. Yeah, like flying over the Statue of Liberty is just beautiful. It's just great.
Yeah.
I love that part. They fly back. It's good. We talked about the scene of him switching to Clark Kent. It's perfect. Then we get, soon after that, into another scene that makes the stomach churn, which is Clark Kent comes into Perry White's office, and he's talking to him, and all of a sudden...
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, I don't know why that gets me. There's so many scenes in this movie of Superman's, X-ray vision, heat vision, strength.
Yes.
The fact that only Superman can hear this.
Yes.
There's something about it that
There's a
gets
lot of
me.
things that Luther does in the movie that are actually quite smart,
Mm-hmm.
which I like because he's like, he's surrounded by Otis, who's an idiot, and Tessmacher, who's a bombshell, but he figured out, I can project this at a certain frequency. He'll come here thinking I'm gonna
Yes.
release the poison gas. Then I'll sit on the thing
Yes.
to make him want to open it. It's like all his steps are pretty smart as a villain, right? So
Yes.
it makes you respect him more and is more formidable because he doesn't have superpowers. So at least he's got to be freaking smart as heck.
Yes.
You know?
I think it also kind of, because of that, it makes me forgive the laziness of him just knowing that kryptonite will kill him.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
yeah.
Yes.
Like
yes.
They show he's got thousands of books, and you assume he's
so
really.
it's a little weird when he says that, but then everything else afterwards,
I
just
agree.
like how clever he is coming up with the way to defeat him, is like,
Yeah.
I buy it.
And there's this undercurrent of certain fans that are like, a supervillain's got to be able to beat Superman in a fight.
Right.
That's not the way
No, he outwits him.
he outwits him.
But
exactly.
he doesn't outwit him because he's smarter. He outwits him because he's more street... not street knowledge, but Superman is naive. Because Superman is good, is all about being a good person.
Good
So
point.
he doesn't have any...
Malice.
Yeah, Superman doesn't understand that somebody would trick him that way.
Good
Yeah.
point.
You
Great
know.
point.
And the
Very
fact
good
that
point.
he is such a good person, he's not going to go in and beat up Lex Luthor. He's
Right,
not
right.
going to go in and grab him by the scruff.
Well,
and,
he
like,
actually
hold him
does.
against the wall and
Well, he throws
He
him.
actually
I
does.
guess he
Yeah,
does throw him,
But,
yeah.
but he doesn't like
he doesn't.
Yeah.
he doesn't smack him around.
Right.
You're right. He
Yeah.
just kind of goes in and talks sternly to him, but he does. You're right. He does throw him across the room, which is funny.
Yeah.
But I also like the way he outsmarts him.
Yeah.
He's like, remember, because he's like, well, where, what is he? The detonator or
Yeah,
whatever.
where's the detonator?
And he just looks over, and then he goes over, and then what does he do?
He looks and he's like, "Oh, you think?"
Oh
you
yeah.
can-"
By the way, that special effect is perfect.
Yes.
The fact that it's an X-ray like.
Just a little vignette.
A little
yeah.
vignette over everything
Yes.
is no one, because I watched Smallville, I watched Lois and Clark,
Yeah.
no one did it better since. It's
Right.
perfect. But the fact that he's sitting on the thing and then he throws him off, which is funny, and then he says, I wouldn't go in there, but he does anyway, and he's like, I warned you.
You want
It-
a little nerdy piece of movie
Do it.
trivia? That chest he's sitting on is the same chest that Obi-Wan pulls Luke's lightsaber out of in Star Wars. It's the exact
Are
same
you
prop.
kidding me?
Yes.
That's amazing.
They reuse the same prop.
Wow.
So when Obi-Wan opens up the chest, pulls out
Yes.
the lightsaber, your father wanted to have this. That's the same chest that Luther is sitting
That's
on.
amazing.
It puts a kryptonite in.
That's so amazing. That's so amazing. So anyway, okay. So then we have again, Lex Luthor's headquarters is brilliant.
Yes.
Underneath, the
What a gorgeous set.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, the production design on this
That's
movie.
the thing. I thought for a minute maybe this is just something they found. No, you see, it's got lights. It was built. Like that's incredible.
It's an incredible
that,
set.
chandelier that's been like
With
a
pool.
It's like working
Yeah.
till
Yeah.
he grabs the
Yeah.
Yes.
oh yeah, it's great.
And then knocks him into the pool, and then
There's a whole subplot in the TV versions where Luther has tigers or
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
he's got tigers in a pit and he keeps throwing stuff into the pit, meat down in the pit, and eventually he threatens to throw Miss Tessmacher in the pit because she betrayed him.
Sure.
There's a whole subplot that I'm glad they cut out, but it's kind of funny when you watch the
Well, to be
older-
honest,
the other version.
I kind of wondered why would Lex Luthor let her get away with this,
Right.
and then keep working with her. The fact that she
Right.
betrayed her, but whatever.
Yes.
That's explained there. But the fact that he knocks her in, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, she has a conscience. She's like, my mother lives in Hackensack or whatever. I
And
love
she
that.
kisses him
Before saving
before
him.
saving him.
It's
He
great.
asks her why, because I didn't think you would love it. It's so sweet.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't understand how this woman ended up with Lex
Right.
Luthor.
Yeah.
But thank goodness that she's an actual, like, again, they really rounded her character.
Yes.
She doesn't have a lot of screen time, but
Right.
very good actress and very good, well-written character.
You're right.
You know?
And also Christopher Reeve. Once she says that, you remember he kind of like cradles her chin, like, oh,
Yeah.
you still have a chance, like and it's like in those few seconds he killed Lois Lane because he didn't reach her in time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then we have
No, but I mean that's a great.
It is.
It's a great choice for him to have to make. He
Right.
made her a promise. He
Yes.
says, he says in the movie, "I never lie."
Exactly.
So she says, "You're going to save my mom first, right? Or
Yes.
my mom and not the other one." And he says, "You can tell it's like,
Yes.
oh my god, I got to sacrifice my friends."
Yeah.
Yes, I will do that. And
Yes.
you know he's going to keep his word.
exactly.
You know.
Now also you talked about how this is the template for superhero movies. Let's see. Spider-Man 1 used this plot with the Green Goblin. You can save either this thing of people or Mary Jane.
Right.
Batman or Dark Knight.
yeah, the Joker, the
you can
the
use. You can
boats.
save either Harvey Dent or Rachel.
Right.
Even the boats themselves.
Yes, you can.
Yeah,
Let's
like-
use
yeah,
this
yeah.
plot twice.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is where it comes from.
So we skipped over a little bit, although it doesn't need a big discussion, but we skipped over all of Luther's machinations of
Yeah.
hijacking the missile, and Otis screws up the code, and Miss Tess
Oh my God.
is,
Okay,
is a damsel on the
okay,
road.
But I feel like it feels a little goofy.
Okay.
It's a little
Lex,
campy.
right?
It is
Yes.
campy.
I like it, but I
I
was
will
like,
admit,
interesting.
It's
Okay,
campy.
yeah.
when I watched it, like in the last 2 days, I admit, I was like, this is not realistic. Like, there's no way that these fucking nuclear missiles could be so easily reprogrammed.
Right.
But it shows up like Luther invented the first self-driving car, and he's got a remote control.
Right,
he
right,
flips it
right,
7
right.
times. A great shot.
Yeah.
Of course, the edit they just repeat the same rollover six times.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole sequence it's fun, but it's also a little silly. Like about face when he goes to kiss the woman on the road, he's like, "I'll do it," and
And Larry Hagman.
she needs a vigorous chest massage,
Yeah.
and you know.
That's campy. That's campy.
It feels, it's the closest they get to like Adam West Batman.
Yeah.
Yes.
This movie, and it
Yes.
was like
I
maybe
agree.
the only time I was like, this
But-
isn't
but
gonna get fits in the movie.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
criticize it too much because if you're thinking about the source material, which is
Sure,
comics
yeah.
for kids, right? It's not like 1989 Batman where they're like, no, we're going serious,
Sure.
dark, menacing.
Sure.
It still has to be a movie for kids from a source from comic books. So
Sure.
that stuff is campy, but again, it doesn't go outside the tone too much. Like
Right.
it's fun campy, It like Superman 3 is a good example of like where you've gone outside the tone and you're inventing things that make no sense. The machine turns people into robots and all that kind of silliness.
That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
but they don't get into that. So okay, so we Luther has made all these plans. He's stolen the missiles. He's launched the missiles. Miss Tessmacher has saved Superman.
Before we get to that, I have to give have to give credit to Ned Beatty, running down the hill, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Gets into the van, one shot. All right, Otis. It's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust you. What did you do? All right. Well, I set the first missile or the first thing to whatever.
Yeah.
The second one to the third one to 117. Wait a minute.
What about the fourth one?
What about the fourth one? No. The third one is supposed to be 11. The fourth one's supposed to be 7. Oh, I don't have a long enough arm. Long arm. You want to see a long arm? Oh no, Mr. Lou. And then the van
Now, does he say, "Do you want to see a long arm," or does he say, "Do you want to see a long harm"? I thought
I
maybe
think
the
it's
joke
said
was.
long arm, but yeah.
I thought it was long arm.
Okay.
I don't know, but again, I don't. At that point, I forgive everything.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so good, right?
Yes.
And then the next scene is with the black guy, and
Yeah.
now the same guy has a different wig, and he fools the entire U.S.
Yeah.
military.
Yes.
Whatever, fine.
Fine.
So yeah, again, fine. So now again, the knots in the stomach come in as soon as I see the overhead shot, and then Lois is driving in the car with the Native American chief
Yes.
guy. I'm like, oh no, it's coming, it's coming.
So that whole sequence is really good. So you've got all these different effects. You've got the bridge collapsing. You've got Lois in the car and the roads collapsing. You got the dam collapsing. The effects on the bridge, like the miniatures and the way the bridge breaks, like
When Superman with a bus and everything,
it's perfect.
It's perfect.
Like all the wires snapping,
Yes.
because they use really big scale models to do all that, and it works great. The stuff with the dam, the stuff of the
Miniatures.
dam breaking is good, like the actual dam itself. But then the miniature town, and
I know.
because you can't miniaturize water,
You're right.
So
You
whenever
can't.
the water is flowing in and it's gonna take over that town, and it's full scale water with tiny model buildings, that stuff doesn't hold up visually, but it's okay. You just kind of get past it.
Yeah. Again, as a kid, it didn't bother me, right?
Yes.
But I don't know what you thought of it. But
You know, it's weird. I don't mind when effects are dated for their time.
Yes.
In a weird way.
Yeah,
It's like-
I wouldn't say go back and fix it.
No,
No.
like I think for this movie, everything works.
Yes.
Visually, I think totally works. Obviously, if there's like green screen jankiness today, it's going to be very like
They're really good though in that movie as well of making a lot out of a very quick shot. So when Superman decides he's going to go down into the earth and fix the core,
we can't even talk
it's
about
it's like if you watch those shots, they're only 1 second, 2
Yeah.
seconds long. But you understand what he's doing.
Yeah.
It looks right. It looks like lava. But really, it's Christopher Reeve in like a studio with a bunch of
red lights.
red lights and tinfoil. It's tinfoil
sure.
and red lights, and they've really gauzed the
Yeah,
camera,
yeah.
and they're blasting light everywhere, and you just assume he's in the molten.
Yes.
But nowadays they would do a long tracking shot, a CG of Superman flying down. You would
Yeah.
follow him through the Earth's core, and he'd
Right.
go through 6
Yes.
layers, and then he would go into the
Good
lava, and
point.
they would widen out, and they would show you the
You're
molten,
right, you're right.
and it would be all CG, and they'd be like, "Look how impressive this shot is."
yeah.
When really the crux of the scene is like he's got to move fast.
Yeah.
He's got to do whatever he's got to do. Look at him; he can survive the molten core. And, it's
Yeah.
I think that's a good point too, because it also reminds me of what you were talking about earlier with on the rooftop when Superman flies away and then Clark is at the door. Because today, I don't think that they would even bother doing
You're
that
right,
shot.
you're right.
You would see him fly away, and then you would hear like a doorbell, and it would cut.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They wouldn't do, but it was so important for them to
Sell.
visually sell
Yeah.
that he's flying away and he's so quickly moving around that he can get dressed and,
Yeah.
and get to the door and ring the doorbell. It's,
Yes.
it's great.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So yeah,
the effects of the what's really well done is the practical effects of the road splitting and her car
Oh my-
going down in
no.
there.
even him like
Yeah.
ripping it out afterwards and like
Wait,
the
okay.
dirt pouring out.
Let's
It's
let's just
wow.
go back a bit. When he is chasing after the first missile, it's perfect.
Yes.
Chasing and like again, visual. Like you've read a million Superman comics. Okay, he can fly. I don't know the speed of sound, the speed of light. But when he's chasing after that missile, it feels real. Like
Yes.
this is Superman. Yet he can't quite fly fast enough, and he's
Yeah.
almost there, and he's struggling, and then he turns it. But again, the stomach knots. He stops the first one, and then he hears,
Yeah.
And that, your stomach sinks. Oh no, it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
He still has to go save Jimmy, do all the other stuff, and then that scene happens.
Save the train.
And then, save the train, which is all great.
Yeah.
But then when the crack in the road happens and Lois's car goes down, it is horrific.
So, going back to showing my daughter this movie,
Yeah.
she started to cry. She's like,
Right.
Lois is dead? He's going to save her. I said, no, Lois is dead, Lucy.
Yes.
And so that really, like, it took the wind out of her sails,
Yeah.
and she was so upset. So that when he does come down, so before he saves her, we have that amazing shot where he screams into
Yes.
the air and flies up. I guess we can talk about...
Let me just say before that, first of all, the scene of her dying is horrific. It
Yes.
is, you're there, you're feeling her death, it's horrific. Then he is flying, and he sees her. You talk about editing. He sees her, and the camera kind of zooms in. And then, again, interesting editing. It cuts to the point of view of the car and him pulling it out. Right? It's
Yes.
it's interesting.
Yes.
And then one quick shot rips the door off.
Yes.
It is so well
Yes.
done. Rips the door off
Yeah.
and then pulls her out so gently.
Yes.
But she's already dead. And then you remember he
Great acting. See, this is what, like, I can't... Maybe Henry Cavill could do it, but what, like, just to show the emotion of that moment, right?
Yes.
It's a comic book movie, but it feels like a real death between
Right.
two people who had a real relationship, you know?
I think it feels so real because you buy that they actually have a real relationship, which you don't buy with Henry and
Amy
Adams,
yeah,
right?
fair
right.
enough.
You're
Like,
100% right.
The chemistry between those two characters, you want to see them together, right?
That's a great-
so when something like that does happen, you buy the acting.
That's
a good
Sure,
point.
Henry Cavill is a good actor, but
It's not in the writing. It's not in
Yeah.
the directing. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
And also when he kisses her and she's already dead, and then remember when he lowers her down and he
It's like-
he almost drops her and he's like, oh,
Yeah.
he's so delicate with her, and then he's just like
The transition from pure grief to pure rage,
yes,
it is so well done.
no, and then he takes it's beautiful, and then he's like no, and then he takes off, and then the camera zooms into Lois, telling us this is what it's about. This is what the whole movie's about. We have both father figures. You cannot interfere with, what does he say?
Human history.
Human history. And then
It's
Pa
forbidden.
Kent-
It's
It
forbidden.
is forbidden. And then Pa Kent says, you're here for a reason. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And then he's like, now I'm going to make the choice. And
Yes.
this is the thing, is that this is a controversial part of the movie, but it's also the key to the movie, is that this is where he makes
The problem with this choice. Okay, so I love it in this movie. It's fine. It works great. Everything comes back to normal. He saves her. It's happy. I love it in this movie. But the problem with this choice is, like, now for every time something goes wrong,
Yes.
you go, why does he just go fucking fly around
I
the
know.
world again?
I think it also kind of defeats the purpose of like Pa's sacrifice as well. Like you can't
Yes.
always save everybody.
Yeah.
It like
Yes.
takes away the fact that Clark is human.
Yeah.
And obviously he's not actually human, but he's
Yes.
so human.
Yeah.
So I also like I remember this part, and I don't even remember. I thought it was in like the second one actually that this
That's a good,
happened.
it's
Well,
funny you should mention that,
yeah, go
because, so as we mentioned earlier, they filmed Superman 1 and most of Superman 2 at the same time.
Yeah.
Then they decided, we're running out of money, plus we don't really like Richard Donner. Let's just finish 1 and we'll finish 2 later. So Richard Donner was like, well, I might only get to do 1 movie.
By the way, the reason they didn't like Richard Donner, he was trying to make the movie too good. These guys, the Sfalcins, were like, we just want to make money. Let's
Yeah.
make money. So when he's taking an extra day to shoot a scene to get the real emotion and the real performances,
Right.
they don't like that. They want him to keep moving faster.
Right.
They're pushing him. And so, he's getting angry over the pressure, and they're getting angry over the money, but they're not farsighted enough to see that what they're getting in return
Yes.
is timeless cinema.
Yes.
And if they just left him alone, he could have delivered them a second movie that was just as good as the first
Yes.
one.
That's so interesting.
But it
Yes.
all
Same
came
thing
down
happened
to
with Star Wars, right? Where he didn't have enough budget to do all 3 movies, so he took the script and blew up the Death Star in the first.
it's a little
movie,
bit different
That's-
because
right? And then
Okay,
that's why they had to make another Death
That's
Star in
kind
the
of
last
true.
one, right?
That's kind of true,
yeah.
yes.
Slightly different scenario in that I don't think the studio.
It wasn't the studio. It was more like the
Yeah,
realism
We don't
of
have
like
money.
I literally
we're not
can't
going to give you money
yeah.
for three films.
Right. So yeah, he took his ideas and took the best little section and kind of used up everything in like
here's
one
what
and a half movies.
Here's what I don't understand is though, and maybe you understand this more than I do, is I've read that the Turning Back the World was supposed to happen in the second movie.
Yeah.
Right? But how would we have those early scenes of Lois in the second movie, which Donner shot? How would we have those if he didn't turn back time in the first movie? How would he have saved her? Or did they not kill her off originally?
Until the second, maybe she didn't die until the.
Maybe she didn't die, and because originally he was supposed to turn back time to fix the supervillain problem.
Yeah.
But I don't understand. So I think maybe Lois wasn't supposed to die
Unless
originally.
he just saved her. Because I know what you're saying. Because I thought about that too. Unless he just literally just saved her, right? And that was it. But yeah, so if you watch the Donner cut of Superman 2, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Okay.
But him rotating the Earth happens in Superman 2.
Okay.
So it was planned for 2. But he's like, well, I'm only going to get one shot, so I'll use it for Superman 1.
Yes.
But yeah,
The effect of it is really good.
Yeah,
like
okay.
the line going around the Earth and the Earth stopping and like it's a perfect visual effect.
And then he has to I love that he goes back
Yeah.
to reset it. Like
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing is, I kind of thought, maybe not when I was a kid, but as I got a little bit older, I kind of just assumed he's not physically changing the rotation. I just thought he's going back in time. Did you ever think that? Or did you
No,
always
I think he's changing the rotation because you see the planet
Yeah,
stop.
of course. But
and everything also goes.
But this is what I mean is, as
I'm not saying it's scientifically
of
makes
course.
any fucking
But
sense.
what I'm saying is that as I got older, I thought he can't possibly be doing that. So
Yeah.
he must be doing this because they could have. It's just like Back to the Future. You just show him go back in time and show a little meter showing the year change.
Yeah, it's a cheat. For this movie, it's okay. I wish they had come up with something different, but I'm okay with it. Doesn't wreck the ending for me. It's funny though. Once he does that, and he saves Lois, and they're back in the Daily Planet. Everything's good. Like they wrap up the movie like that. He drops Luther off, and then the movie's over. You know.
Well, it's the climax of the movie, but the thing is, and we can talk about this later when we talk about Superman 2. But the thing is, it's like in Superman 2, he makes another big choice, which is you can only be with a human if you lose all your powers, which we'll talk about later. We won't talk about it now. But in this movie, he makes a similar choice, but maybe they could have done the same climax with, here's your magic reviver crystal that you can only use once. Okay, fine. I'll only use it.
I don't know that that's better. I just
thought of it now. I'm just saying,
maybe he's able to save Lois, but Jimmy dies or something.
Or something.
Yeah.
Or someone else dies. Or Ma Kent dies. I don't know what. Yeah, you're right. Or who knows? We don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
it's funny. I just realized that. He drops off. I guess because she saved him, but he drops off Luther and Otis, but
not Miss Tessmacher. I noticed that too.
Or just she dies at the end.
Who?
Lois. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I understand why they didn't.
Yeah.
But I think that is a better ending. I don't know.
But I know, but we can't kill off Lois, so maybe kill off someone else.
Maybe he could have snapped her neck.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, that's a great ending. We're gonna wrap it up there. Okay.
He gets allowed to scream and everything.
Yeah, exactly, and that'll make it all okay. So let's just say that we all love Superman, the character. We all love Superman in this movie. I have the box set. It has Superman Returns on it. I have never watched it again. I watched it the first time, and that's the only time I'll ever give it.
Yep.
Man of Steel, I will never pay money for that movie.
Yeah.
Are you excited about this new actor playing Superman?
Yeah, I like Superman. So I'm excited that somebody's going to have another shot at it. And I hope they make a great movie, and I hope the guy is great as Superman. It doesn't have to be Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve is the best so far. Maybe this guy will be great. I want to give him a shot.
Great point.
I'll give him a shot.
Yeah. Great point. Are you excited for the new Superman?
Yeah, I am. I think that having somebody in charge that likes the source material is
for a change.
It's going to be the best thing that DC's got going.
I just hope that they just go fresh with it because they tried to. I think it's Superman Returns. They tried to incorporate the Donner tone and the Brando voice, and they tried to recapture that magic, and they couldn't. So you got to create new magic with the new Superman.
If I could just say, Bryan Singer couldn't recapture it. Not to say they couldn't. It could be recaptured. Just
Well, not with Brandon Ruth, and not with
him, no. But like, if I can just say, James Bond. There's 20-something James Bond movies, and at some point they always have the same theme, right?
Yes.
They always have the same intro. They always have the same whatever. So it can be done, just not by the creators that they've used so far. So it is possible.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank Jordan Krug for joining us for this excellent discussion. I want to thank you, Josh, for giving us your perspective on this movie that you only saw, later in the later years. But I still think, could this be the best superhero movie ever made? What do you think? It's in the top 2.
If you qualify it for when it was made, and that nothing else similar came before it. So if you're qualifying on its sort of innovative status,
sure,
you could argue that yes. I think have there been better superhero movies made since? Maybe, but they all owe they're all built on that foundation. So it's not really fair to compare that to that,
sure. And what's one that's possibly better, do you think?
I think the second Nolan Batman movie is possibly better.
That's the one I would say. That's the only one I would say. What do you think? What is this rank?
Yeah, I think The Dark Knight is pretty damn near perfect. I think it does help that it has modern visual effects to kind of like hoist it up a bit. This is also maybe a little biased, but I also really love Into the Spider-Verse. It has a very different tone, but I think that Into the Spider-Verse is this generation's Superman.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for this review. Jordan, you're invited back. If you're free.
Oh, I want to do Superman 2. I got a lot to say about that.
All right, you're invited back for Superman 2. We'll see you soon on Tape Crusaders. Until the next time, see you later.